أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله الأطهار على رسول الله وآله الأطهار. اللهم صل على محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Jazakallahu khair, Brother Gul Ahmed. Alhamdulillah, it was an honor to have that powerful recitation of the Quran in this blessed initiation of the month of Muharram. Insha'Allah, these upcoming 11 nights will prove to be beneficial, resourceful for everyone present, and insha'Allah we can take away all of the key lessons that Imam Hussain عليه الصلاة والسلام imparted to us through his sacrifice on those blessed tragic nights of Karbala. Insha'Allah ta'ala, for the next segment of the program, I'd like to invite Brother Sayyid Rada Rasul to deliver a short presentation. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أسلم الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين في صلوات محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum jamiyan wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, my condolence for the month of Muharram, which is the first month in Islamic year, and the month in which a great Imam Hussain alayhi salam was martyred by the worst creation of Allah Almighty. Now, before I start my presentation, I would like to talk a bit about the historical events that happened when Imam Hussain alayhi salam departed from Medina. Now, on the 3rd of Shaban, Imam Hussain alayhi salam decided to go to Medina for Hajj. And at the same time, he sent his brother, Muslim bin Aqil, to Kufa to take allegiance from the chiefs of Shi'as of that time. Brothers and sisters, although he wanted to do Hajj, but because of the fear of bloodshed, he changed his Hajj to Umrah. And on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, he decided to leave Mecca. But before he left Mecca, he addressed the people and said, "O people, the death has left a mark on human beings the same way as a necklace leaves a mark on a young woman's neck." And by these words, he reflected and showed the people of that time that the social and religious corruption of that time could only be remedied by the martyrdom of a person like him, which made him the Sayyid Shuhada of Islam for saving Islam. Now, my brothers and sisters, this great sacrifice was entirely made to save the true essence of Islam. And this is how important our deen is. Islam is the purest religion of all time, and Quran is the best manual to how to live a life and how to face different events and issues of life. Please say salawat to Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, the main question is, how can one be a true Shia of Imam Ali alayhi salam and a true lover of Imam Hussain alayhi salam? To make it easy, I believe that our deen is based on 3 A's. The first A is your aqaid, your beliefs, that you believe in one God, you believe in Nabuwat, Imamat, Qiyamat, and many more. When you say, Ashhadu Allah ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, wa ashhadu anna aliyan waliyullah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. This is the faith of a true Shia, and without this, no doubt, your faith is not complete. The second A is ahkam, the orders that are given by Allah Almighty. and which is given to us through Quran, Ahadith, and Imams. These orders could be saying prayers, giving zakat, doing hajj, and many more. And if you don't follow these orders, you're not a complete Muslim at all. Now, the third and the most important A, which I believe, is ikhlaq. And this is the A that connects the previous two A's together. If you pray 5 times a day, if your belief is right, but your behavior towards others, whether it's your neighbors, your parents, or a stranger you met on the street is not right, then you are not a true Shia of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Your behavior should show that you follow that Imam who is the true savior of Islam, who is the right hand of Prophet, about whom Holy Prophet said, Man kuntum mawlahu fahaza aliyan mawla. Brothers and sisters, Imam Ali alayhi salam says that even giving a smile is charity. That is how important your behavior is. If your ikhlaq is not good, you're not a true mu'min. If you're not a mu'min, you won't go to Jannah. Now, I would like to end my presentation by the words of Allah Almighty, where He defines this Jannah. In the Quran, Allah Almighty says that, O people, please say salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The people who are righteous are promised wherein the rivers of water unaltered, rivers of milk, the taste of which never changes, the rivers of wine, delicious to those who drink, and rivers of purified honey, in which they will have from all kind of fruits and forgiveness from their Lord. And brothers and sisters, the love of Imam Ali alayhi salam is the first step to Jannah. There is no doubt that if you love Imam Hussain alayhi salam, only then your ibadahs will be qabool, and only then you will be able to call yourself a true mu'min. Now, I pray to Almighty that may Allah give us the tawfiq to refrain from sins and to live a life of good deeds so that we're able to go to Jannah when the time comes, inshallah. Please say salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Jazakallah khair, brother Sayyid Rida. Alhamdulillah, always a pleasure this whole past year. Jazakallah khair for all your contributions and help. May Allah bless you eternally, inshallah. No doubt, just as you said, the Quran is an example of how we have to model our lives. And just as respected Qari Gul Ahmad was reciting, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, Dhalikal Kitabu La Rayba Fihi, Hudan lil Muttaqeen. A guide for the pious, a guide for those who are God conscious. This is the Holy Quran, but more importantly, we have to remember the Ahlul Bayt, the living Quran, the ones who personify these teachings, insha'Allah ta'ala. Insha'Allah, we'll proceed to the next segment, the main lecture for tonight. Please welcome Sheikh Hamid Waqar with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبو القاسم محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Alhamdulillah, as always, it's an honor and a privilege to be here amongst you, especially in these nights. I want to thank Brother Hussein and whoever else made it possible to come and be here, although I feel probably I'm not deserving of it, but inshallah I'll definitely take the opportunity to hopefully remind everyone about Imam Hussain alayhi salam and the tragedies that befell him. Alhamdulillah, amazing Quran recitation, Hajj, Gol Ahmed, mashallah. And Sayyid, thank you for the short talk before mine. What I wanted to do is take this series that we have and look at Muharram as a sense of being a new time to make a pledge with our Imam, our living Imam, Imam Zaman alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And obviously we know Muharram on the Arabic calendar is the first month of the year, so it is the time for those New Year's resolutions that we do in the Western New Year's as well, right? So it's a time that we can use to renew this pledge. Now, one of the things that we need to do, though, in order to successfully renew this pledge, is to have basira, or to have insight. And the way that I want to define insight for these lectures is a correct understanding of what our responsibility is. Right? Because in Islam, there's a million things for us to do. There's a million things for us to concentrate on. But how do we determine what is our responsibility? And what I mean by responsibility is what is it that we could do to help bring back the Imam Zaman alayhi salam, who's waiting on us, right? Now, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to look at how Islam and how the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam provide value to our lives now. Right? Obviously, we could read about them in history. We could memorize their names and their kunyas and the names of all their children and the date that they were born and the date that they were martyred. We could learn all of these, these historical facts. But I think it's better to try to learn what their teachings were and how to implement those teachings, right? Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at the major issues that we're facing in the modern world. And what I did is I Googled that. What are the major issues that is being, looked at in the modern world? Or what are the major problems? And looking through, a number of articles, so the ones that I wanted to touch upon and the ones that were the most common were the following. And these are the lectures. I'll be giving a lecture each night on one of these topics. So tonight, we're going to be talking about poverty a little bit. And then at the end, we're going to try to see how the Islamic understanding of how to eradicate poverty can be implemented through us. Right? And then that's one thing we could do to try to bring back the Imam, inshallah. I want to look at a number of other topics as well. So refugees, which is interesting because in Australia there's many of them. The pandemic, right? Definitely COVID and all of the medical dramas that we've been experiencing over the past few years is a huge thing. What's the Islamic response to that? How are we supposed to act as Muslims, facing pandemics? I want to look at mental health. Mental health is a big one as well. I want to look at disabilities. I want to look at gender equality, which is a big topic in this world. Look at children's rights, which is another huge topic. Look at the whole media system, right? Disinformation, freedom of the press, a topic with regards to that. I want to look at corruption. I want to look at global cooperation, and also, which I think is a really important one, the lack of spirituality, or a decrease of importance given to spirituality and religion as a whole in the modern society. Right? So we're going to look at each one of these topics, each one, in order that I gave you on one night, inshallah. If that's all right with you, please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And like you wouldn't recite a salawat there, right? All right, so today we're going to talk about poverty. When I look at poverty, the first thing I did was try to find some statistics, right? And I had statistics from a few years ago, but these statistics changed a little bit. And it's pretty shocking, the statistics that I came across, right? So I'll just kind of list them out to you. And these are the first two statistics are from the World Bank. So the World Bank, they said that the international poverty line is $2.15 a day. So someone who makes less than $2.15 a day is in extreme poverty. Living here in Australia, I couldn't even imagine how it's possible to earn less than that. $2, right? One of those $2 coins that are nothing, right? Whereas living in the Middle East, being able to see other cultures who are facing a lot of poverty and difficulty, it becomes more clear that there are people in this world. And there's over 5% of the world lives in extreme poverty. So 5% doesn't seem like a lot, but do the math, there's 7 billion people in this world, right? Still a lot of people living under $2 a day. Then the next level of poverty is $10 a day, right? Still, compared to Australia, I think that's about half of minimum wage for 1 hour, right? $10 a day. The stats say that 62% of the world lives on less than $10 a day. That's over half, right? So we definitely have huge amount of privilege here in Australia, just in the amount of money that we earn. No matter what job we have. If we're working minimum wage here, we're earning 2 times what 60% of the world earns in a day. We're earning in an hour. Double it. Right? That's huge. Right? So it's a lot of privilege. 193 million people in the world today have no idea where their next meal will come from. They have what's called acute food insecurity. 193 million people. It's huge. Right? That's an 80% increase in the last 5 years as well, because of all the stuff that's been going on in the world. Right? Then we have something that's also called relative poverty. So relative poverty is different. Relative poverty is poverty in comparison to the norm of the society that you're living in. So here in Australia, although it would be difficult to find people living in extreme poverty, meaning earning under $2.15 a day, relative poverty, definitely. Right? And these are people that don't have enough money to take a holiday outside of NSW, for instance, or outside of Sydney even. I know of people who struggle, and I was talking to one person the other day where he and his wife will skip meals every other day so they could feed their child every day. Right? And he's living here in Australia, in Sydney. Right? So you have people even in this country who are struggling financially. Right? Now, Poverty, these statistics just basically show us that it exists in the world. I don't think that's a shock. I think hopefully every one of us was aware that poverty exists. But now I want to turn to the Islamic system of eradicating poverty. What does Islam say about poverty? Right? There's plenty of traditions that discuss the danger of poverty. Right? And one of them, I didn't write it down here, but from memory, I forgot which Imam alayhi salam said it, but he said that poverty eats away at faith as fire eats away wood, burns wood. Right? And this is extreme poverty. So this is a type of poverty where you don't know where your next meal will come from. You don't know how you're going to shelter yourself from rain. You're so impoverished that all you're thinking about is how to survive. You don't have any mental strength to think about worship and God and anything else. All you're doing is thinking about food and shelter. Right? So that level of poverty destroys faith because you'll do anything to survive, even if it's to commit sins in that state. Right? Now, there's plenty of traditions that tells us that we should be giving charity in order to help those. We mentioned the food insecurity. I have a whole list of hadith about providing food to other people. Right? I'll just read them off. Imam Hussain alayhi salam was asked about generosity. And he defined generosity as follows: to give first before being asked, and to feed others during times of necessity and famine. So generosity is feeding others. Right? Imam Ali alayhi salam, the nourishment of the body is food, obviously, while the nourishment of the soul is feeding others. Imam Bakr alayhi salam, verily Allah loves those who feed food to other people. Right? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, one of the things which gives one obligatory entrance to paradise and forgiveness from Allah is feeding a starving person. Right? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, verily Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, resembled the Prophet the most in the way he ate. He used to eat bread, vinegar, and oil, while he would feed other people bread and meat. So he used to give in charity more than he would consume for himself. Right? Again, I don't think any of this comes as a shock to us. But how much charity or feeding others do we do? Right? So feeding others, again, here in Australia, although people exist that are struggling for their next meal, people exist. There's plenty of organizations as well that feed people overseas. So you could easily just donate money online. You don't have to go anywhere, with the click of a button, right? To make sure it's a good charitable organization, obviously. But they exist, right? You can easily do that. It's something that we can easily add into our religious program, right? Now, in addition to these recommended charities, and there's way more. I just mentioned about feeding other people, but about giving money, about giving charity before travel, so many different traditions we have that we could spend all day just reading them, right? But in addition to these wajib charities, there's other ways that Islam uses to try to help eradicate poverty. One and two of them are obligatory charities, right? Zakat and khums. Zakat is wajib mostly for farmers, right? Most I don't think people in this room, to my knowledge, would fall under the categories of people who need to give zakat. But still, zakat is there for a certain segment of the population, and that segment of the population, it's wajib upon them to give a percentage of their wealth to the poor. Right? So, yes, it's recommended to give charity. It's not wajib. You don't have to. If you do, it's great. You could go to heaven. Allah will love you. So many recommendations to do so. But if you decide, nope, I just want to do the bare minimum, you still have to give charity to the poor as part of the bare minimum. Right? And then khums. Khums is a big one, because khums is the one that applies to the majority of us. Right? Khums, obviously, giving 20% of our excess wealth to charity. 20%. Right? So it's like tax. But it's not tax on the money that comes in, it's tax on the money that is saved. Right? So the money that you need to survive and that you need to spend for yourself and your family, that's exempt from khums. The money that lasts at the end of the year and the money that remains in your bank account that you saved, 20% of that goes to charity. Right? So again, it's a portion of our wealth that goes to help those who need it. And we see in this world there's plenty of people who need it. Right? Now this 20%, the way that it's described in a hadith and the way that our muraja discuss it, it's not even our money. It doesn't even belong to us, the money that khums is obligatory on, the money that we have to pay. It belongs to Imam Zaman alayhi salam. So we have a choice. We could keep it. We don't have to give it. We could keep it and we could spend it on ourselves and we could be of those who are stealing from our Imam. Or we could do the wajib and give it to the muraja who spend it on Islamic activities and charity. You had a question? Khums once, so there's different ways you could pay it. The simplest way is you have a khums date, which is one date in the year, and one day in the year you pay khums. That's the easiest way to do it. We could discuss how, inshallah, another time. Now, there's other forms of ways that money comes into the Islamic treasury, which is then spent on those who need it. One is called the jizya, which is a tax that's applied to non-Muslims who are living in Muslim countries. And sometimes people go all up in arms and get really upset. Why is it that Christians and Jews have to pay the jizya and Muslims don't? And this is so unfair and so biased against them or whatever. We're discriminating against them. Right? But wait a second. A Christian and a Jew don't have to pay zakat or khums. Right? So they're not paying that tax, but they're paying the jizya, which is 2.5%, I believe, off memory. I could look into it. It's not a fiqh question I deal with too often. But still, it's a small percentage. It's not a huge percentage of their wealth. It's a small percentage. And it's in place of khums and zakat, which they're not paying. Right? So whoever is living in an Islamic country, regardless of whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, they're paying some money into the Islamic treasury to help the poor. Right? And that's a big aspect of what happens. There's even more ways that money enters the Islamic treasury. Fines. Right? Not fines as in like parking fines, but fines for like, let's say, not fasting or breaking your fast intentionally in the month of Ramadan. Right? Where you have to free a slave, feed 60 people, or fast. Right? Or that's a bad example because you're feeding people. But if there's the kafara where if you don't make it up, you have to pay a kafara, and there's certain reasons why there's kafara that you have to observe in the month of Ramadan for certain issues, right? And those ones enter the Islamic treasury, right? There's all kinds of ways that money enters this Islamic treasury and is then used to try to eradicate poverty. Now, this is actually one of the reasons why Imam Hussain alayhi salam stood up and had to stand up against Yazid, because the money that was collected for the Islamic treasury had stopped being distributed correctly and started being distributed in accordance to tribalistic ties. Right? So during the time of the Prophet, all the money that would come into the Islamic treasury was used to promote Islam and eradicate poverty, to try to keep a balance within the society, a balance of wealth. Right? Then, after the Prophet passes away, and a couple of the Khulafa pass as well, and the third one, Uthman, comes. Uthman decided that he wanted to distribute the wealth differently. He didn't want to distribute it justly and fairly and equally amongst the poor, but rather he wanted to say the public treasury belongs to Bani Umayyah, which is who he's from. And he started to give, portions of this public treasury, portions of the money raised through zakat and homes and all the other ways that we discussed, and he would give it to members of his tribe. He wouldn't give it to those who were in need. And what happened? People rose up and started protesting against the third Khalif. Thank you, brother. People started, screaming about the injustice that they were facing that was new to them. Thank you. Right? Now, it got so bad that people came to actually assassinate the third Khalifa. Right? Some people say it wasn't the Muslims in Medina, it was people outside of Medina who came to attack Uthman. Regardless who it was, if it was the people within Medina, they were upset. If it was people from outside, Muslims from outside who were upset, the people in Medina didn't do anything to stop them. Right? There was a lot of hatred towards this third Khalifa due to the way the public treasury was being spent, due to the change from dividing this wealth equally to those who need it, and instead being divided unjustly amongst Bani Umayyah. Now the third Khalifa was assassinated. Imam Ali alayhi salam, after a whole ordeal, became the next Khalifa, who he was rightfully the first Khalifa in the beginning, but that's a whole nother story. Then after he was martyred, and shortly thereafter Imam Hassan alayhi salam was martyred, Muawiyah. Right? Even before Imam Hassan was martyred, Muawiyah came into power, but Muawiyah came into power. And Muawiyah is also of Bani Umayyah. And he had that same mindset that the public treasury should be divided amongst my tribe. Right? I don't care what's happening. I don't care who's experiencing poverty. I care that my tribe is taken care of. And he started to distribute the wealth unjustly. Imam Hussain alayhi salam lived for 10 more years, right, while Muawiyah was the Khalifa. He was martyred. Imam Hussain alayhi salam lived for a number of years while Muawiyah was considered the Khalifa, and he didn't rise up and fight against him either, right? So we know that this alone wasn't cause for the Imams to rise up and fight. But it was one of the things that changed from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the Khulafa and the reign of Bani Umayyah, right? And Imam Hussain alayhi salam stood up to fight against these changes. He wanted to bring Islam back to what it was during the Prophet. So, and when we're saying what it was, it's not like this is a long time ago either, right? It's not like I'm saying right now, I want to bring the Ummah back to what it was. No. Imam Hussain alayhi salam lived, obviously, during the lifetime of the Prophet. It's his grandson, right? The people who were alive there were alive during the time of the Prophet. Many people who were alive at the time of Karbala, right? Many of the people who were alive when Yazid was attacking Imam Hussain were present in Ghadir, right? So it's not like we're saying let's turn back the clock centuries. No. Imam Hussain is just trying to reawaken the ummah that fell asleep so quickly and abruptly after the Prophet passed away. And all of these changes happened. And one of the changes is this unjust distribution of wealth. All right? Now for us, we're not in a position where we're in control of the Muslim treasury, where we get to decide how millions of dollars are distributed amongst the impoverished of the world. We don't have that responsibility on our shoulders. Thank God we don't, because if we did, good luck. But we do live in a society which, according to the statistics, is very, very generous when it comes to money. Remember, 63% of the world lives on less than half of minimum wage for 1 hour. They live on $10 a day, right? Work a minimum wage job for 8 hours. You're earning, how many times more, right? So we have a responsibility to try to help others. Now, I'm not saying give all of your money in charity and live on $10 a day yourself. Not what I'm saying. But one thing we could take away is to decide amongst yourselves, what percentage of money do I want to give over and above the wajib khums that I already give? Right? And that could be the smallest of percentages. 1%, 5%, whatever it is. Make a decision. And the beautiful thing about this world right now, or technology, there's many bad things about technology, but one of the good things is you could give money to this charitable organization that we know and trust, not any charitable organization, but good ones, who are doing good things, either inside Australia or outside. And you can give it anonymously. No one knows about it. You don't have to tell anyone. It could be in complete secret. And you get way more rewards by doing that. Right? So you could think, all right, in my paycheck, I get, let's say, $500 a week, $1,000 a week, whatever it is. I'm going to give 5%, 1%, 1% of $500 is what? $5? It's not much money. It's a coffee, right? 5% is $25. That's like, I don't know, going to Macca's or something. Probably, I think that's too much for Macca's, but whatever. Right? $25, not too much. It's affordable. We could do that, right? We could afford that, inshallah. And if we can't, then make it a smaller percentage. But give something small. That's the takeaway. And I'll remind us every day about these takeaways too. So for 10 days, we'll be reminded that we could do this. And this is one thing that we could act like the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam acted. Right? You all remember the story of Imam Ali alayhi salam, where there's plenty of stories of Imam Ali alayhi salam giving charity, but the one that's mentioned in the Quran, right? إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. Right? Your guardian, your wali, your leader is only Allah, His apostle, and the faithful who maintain the prayer, pay the zakat while in ruku. And we know zakat is a word for charity. It's not here is not the wajib zakat, but the word zakat meaning charity. And we know that Imam Ali alayhi salam, according to the tafsir of this verse, both accepted by Sunni and Shia sources, is when Imam Ali alayhi salam was praying, the Prophet was also there. Abu Dhar Ghafari is the one who narrates this, right? A poor person came into the masjid, asked for charity, asked for help. No one responded. Imam Ali alayhi salam was in ruku and lifted his finger to give his ring in charity so the person could sell the ring and buy food or whatever he needed. And he took the ring, and this verse was then revealed immediately thereafter. Right? So we have, this is just one example of the Imam giving charity and being mentioned by Allah in the Quran for doing so. Right? Huge rewards. Now, inshallah, part of probably the most important part of coming here in these nights is to remember the tragedies that befell Imam Hussain alayhi salam and the mu'mineen of that time. And it's important for us to remember him, to open our hearts and try to shed tears. There's a tradition that I just heard today that one who sheds a tear the size of a wing of a fly, the wing of a fly, this is a tiny, tiny tear, right? Will reap the rewards of crying for Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So inshallah, please open our hearts while we call up Brother Hussain to remind us of the tragedies of Karbala. After 3 salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Jazakallah khair, first of all, Sheikh Hamid, for that very insightful and important reminder for all of us to be aware of the state of affairs in the world today, the injustices, the oppression which exist all over. And the solutions, of course, as Sheikh Hamid mentioned, they're found in the examples of our Imams, our Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. It brings back to mind some of the sayings of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. He tells his companion Abu Dhar al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu something very powerful. He says to him, if you want to improve yourself, look at those of lesser means, not those of greater means. He tells Abu Dhar al-Ghifari the best kind of charity is the one that is given from wealth that is earned through hard labor. You see these kinds of beautiful traditions. You look at the example of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, constantly feeding the poor, giving his time, his attention, his resources, not just money, his time as well, to the orphans, to the poor, to the blind, the disabled, all of these people. This is the example of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. And of course, tonight, we commemorate Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, as-Sayyid al-Shuhada, the master of martyrs. Now, in Imam al-Hussein's retinue, there were people of a poor background, very poor background. There were servants. And Imam al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, he freed all of these servants. He said to them, go, you are free. You have no obligation to fight and die for this cause. But none of those servants left. They stayed with Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam because they knew his character and example. They would not leave him on his own. They knew the injustices that he was experiencing at the hands of these cursed individuals. Amongst them, for example, Jawn ibn Huway, inshallah we'll be discussing him on the fourth night. To begin with, brothers and sisters, I'd like to open this discussion on the very crucial topic, and that is balance, finding the balance between two given extremes. Oftentimes in life we face these kinds of situations, and you think about two extremes, arrogance and humility. If someone is too arrogant, he feels himself superior to the people around him. He feels that he can trample on the rights of others, that he can oppress them for the sake of his own selfish gains, his own selfish ambitions. On the other hand, you have people who are humble, and keep in mind, humility, being humble, it's a virtue. But when it's taken to the extreme, it becomes a big problem. Because the only time the arrogant person can succeed is if humility is taken to the extreme. When someone is able to find the right balance between those two, that kind of toxic relationship between someone who is arrogant and someone who is humble, it goes away. Because you have these kinds of situations, those who are arrogant constantly trying to take advantage of the humility of others. This not only enables that arrogant person to continue acting in this way, it also makes the humble person feel devalued. It makes him feel worth less than others. And this sometimes leads to depression, anxiety. It can even lead to suicide. We find that balance in the examples of the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. How to behave in these situations, the kind of relationship that you want amongst your peers, amongst your people, is one that is harmonious, not one that is toxic. For example, when someone asks something of you, when he's requesting something of you, is he asking respectfully? Is he asking something that is reasonable? And is he asking something that is within your capacity? Ask yourselves these questions. Think before you act. And inshallah, you can ensure that you have that harmonious relationship. And from the other end, same thing. When you request something from anyone, ask these very same questions. Am I asking something reasonable? Is it within his capacity? All of these kinds of things, very important. And this goes back to Karbala, because as Sheikh Hamid was saying, the Muslim Ummah had gone so far to the extreme. Under the Khilafat, so-called Khilafat of Yazid, La'natullah alayh, may the curse of Allah be upon him eternally. Under his caliphate, the public treasury was looted even more than it was under Muawiyah. He was a person who would openly drink alcohol, who would womanize, who would break the laws of Islam as though they meant nothing. He would oppress the people, and he would have couplets and poems being recited in his court, which would ridicule the concept of salat, the concept of prayer. It would ridicule prophethood, nabuwah. And such a man was demanding the allegiance of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the one who would climb on the back of Rasulullah. And Rasulullah loved him so much that he would not climb up from sujood. He would not allow Imam al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam to fall and hurt himself. And now this Imam of the Ahlul Bayt, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And now our blessed third Imam found himself surrounded by enemies, bloodthirsty villains who would stop at nothing to kill him, treacherous cowards who knew right from wrong, yet it would not pass a certain line. They would not act if it meant putting themselves in harm's way, and that was the true test of faith. Very few people were able to pass that. 72 or maybe 73 people out of 40,000 were able to pass that test. It's a great reminder for us today. Can we be like those people? Very unlikely, all of us. But we can try our best, insha'Allah ta'ala, by remembering their examples and implementing them in our lives. Now, as we mentioned, the Muslim Ummah had gone so far to one extreme that the only way to restore the balance of the nation was an extreme measure, an extreme sacrifice on the part of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. Again, think back to the concept that we mentioned, two extremes, arrogance, humility. Another example, pursuing wealth. If you pursue too much wealth just for the sake of being rich, that's a problem. On the other hand, if you do not pursue wealth at all and do not fulfill your worldly responsibilities, that's also a problem. Again, finding that right balance. Now, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. On the 20th of Rajab, Muawiyah la'natullah alayhi had passed away, and he gave the Khilafah to Yazid. May the curse of Allah be upon him. Now this was in direct violation of the treaty that he made with Imam al-Hasan alayhi salatu wasalam, and just a week afterwards, Yazid la'natullah alayhi, he sent a message to the governor of Medina, Walid. He ordered him to secure the allegiance of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. Walid sought the advice of Marwan ibn al-Hakam, another cursed Umayyad caliph in the future. Marwan suggested that Walid should force Imam al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam to give him the allegiance or kill him. Imam al-Hussain became aware of this plot, and so he departed from the city of Medina towards the holy city of Mecca. And there he received thousands and thousands of letters, allegedly. Thousands, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but he received a lot of letters from the people of Iraq, the people of Kufa. They promised that they would support him as their leader, that they would accept him to rule over them because they were opposed to the tyranny of Yazid. They saw him as an illegitimate leader. And so they gave these promises to Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. But when push came to shove, the vast majority of them abandoned Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. They left him thirsty along with his young daughter Sukaina salamullahu alayha and the 6-month-old Ali al-Asghar alayhi salatu was-salam on the plains of Karbala. Imam Hussain alayhi salatu was-salam witnessed the death of so many of his relatives, and afterwards the camp of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu was-salam was humiliated by these cursed people, dragged from one place to another, whipped, chained, and forced to continue enduring the thirst. And yet in the face of all of this, brothers and sisters, at the end of the day, over 1,000 years after the events of Karbala, all of us, we herald and extol the name of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, and we curse the name of Yazid la'natullah alayh. Karbala is not just a struggle of one time period. Karbala reflects an endless struggle against oppression, a timeless struggle against oppression, and insha'Allah ta'ala we can remember that. Tomorrow, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll continue on the story of Karbala, this tragic saga, as we move into the martyrdom of the Gharib of Kufa, Muslim ibn Aqil alayhi salatu was-salam, the cousin of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu was-salam. Inshallah, with that, we'll close this segment. I'd like to invite Brother Saeed Sharif to deliver Latmiya for tonight's program. Please welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
You don't have to, it's okay. Testing. So is it echo? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Hussein. Hussein, 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 Agha, 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 Mawla, 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 Hussein, 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 Atshan, Hussein, Atshan, Hussein, 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 Agha, Hussein, Agha, Mawla. Hussein, Hussein, این متن نوحه عمه بابای مهاجر رو خواستم در اولین شب بخونم از زبان حضرت رفعیه. از عمهش میپرسه بابای کجاست. دل پریشانم که از بابم نمی آید سیر. دل پریشانم که از بابم نمی آید سیر. عمه بابایم کجاست؟ عمه بابایم کجاست؟ من نمیخواهم جدا گردم ز دشت کربلا. من نمیخواهم جدا گردم ز دشت کربلا. عمه بابایم کجاست؟ عمه بابایم کجاست؟ عمه میسوزد دلم با چرا عمه میسوزد دلم با چرا عمه بابایم کجاست؟ عمه بابایم کجاست؟ عمه بابایم کجاست؟ عمه بابایم کجاست؟ گردی آید میکنم، گردی آید مشکن در بر تنگاتان گریبی آید گیر مشکن در بر تنگاتان شوق رون از خیمه دین با من چرا سیجان شوق رون از خیمه دین با من چرا سیجان ذکر لا حول و ذکر لا حول همه بایم کجا همه بایم کجا گر نموده تشنگی قلب مرا من نمیخواهم در این دشت بلای قطره جای آب و جای آن عمه به من فرما جای آب و جای آن عمه به من فرما ده به من یک پاسخی عمه تو از بحر خدا ده به من یک پاسخی عمه تو از بحر خدا عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست عمه دیدار پدر آب حیاتم میدهد عمه دیدار پدر آب حیاتم میدهد چهره نورانیش از غم نجاتم میدهد چهره نورانیش از غم نجاتم میدهد جای آنم پدر آب فراتم میدهد گر بی آید میکند سیراب طفلان فرات حسین عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست شیهه اسب پدر ای عمه می آید به گوش شوق دیدار پدر برد از سر من عقل و هوش این صدایی می افکند در خیمه ها جوش و خروش تا آمد از میدان صدا از خیرن نسا عمه بابایم کجاست بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست بر زمین ای ذوالجناح بر آتش اینسان میزنی پای خود را بر زمین نالان و گریان میزنی دبا غمت زخمی فزون بر قلب طفلان میزنی در حرم از شیهت چه محشر کبرا به پاست عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست ذوالجناح برگو چرا زینت چنین شده واژه گو چرا ای با وفا یال تو گشته فرز چون کنم باور که از تو باب من گشته گو که این که ذوالجناح باب من افتاده کجا حسین عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست ذوالجناح ای مهربان اسب وفادار پدر گوشنیدی در دم آخر تو گفتار پدر بوسه باران میکنم یاد پدر یاد تو را عمه بابایم کجاست ای خدا بابا چرا بر خاک ها افتاده است ای خدا بابا چرا بر خاک ها افتاده است کی به حلقش از جفا شمشیر کین پنهاده داده است کیپ حلقش از جعفر و شمشیر کین پنهاده است حسین آب یا دردم آب یا دردم آخر برا کف داده است آب یا دردم آب یا دردم آخر برا کف داده است یا که شد یا که شد یا که شد کشت لب عطشان ز جور عشقی یا که شد کشت لب عطشان ز دشت او ز جور عشقی عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست عمه بابایم کجاست دل پریشانم که از بابم نمی آید صدا صلی علی محمد و آل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Jazakallah khair, Brother Saeed, for the Latmiya. Insha'Allah ta'ala, we'll continue having these in the upcoming nights. And insha'Allah, they continue to accentuate our love for Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam and his great sacrifice. With that, tonight, insha'Allah ta'ala, we conclude. Keep in mind one thing, tomorrow's program, it won't be held in the multi-purpose room, in the workshops 2 and 3 here. It'll be held downstairs in a room called the multi-purpose room 1. It's easy enough to find, just downstairs, close by to the ladies section. So insha'Allah ta'ala, we'll perform tomorrow's program there. After that, we'll continue in workshops 2 and 3. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jazakumullahu khairan, everyone, for attending. Insha'Allah, please feel welcome to attend all of the nights. And most importantly, absorb the lessons of Karbala. Absorb them truly into the innermost depths of your heart and let them translate into your actions in real life. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. Everyone please stand up for ziyarah.
السلام عليك يا سيدة مولاتي يا فاطمة الزهراء سيد نساء العالمين. السلام عليكما يا سبطي نبي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين.